Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. It is the first week of the 2025 NFL season, which means for the New York Jets, it is officially Steelers week. The Jets open their season at MetLife Stadium on Sunday at 1 o'clock. As we welcome our former friend Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields, the Steeler last year, will be leading the Jets out on the field, and we're ready to get to it. And we will be doing a true game preview later this week of that matchup, and I'm excited for the guest that we have joining us on Thursday. But today is about a full preview of the Jets season. I'm going to give you my predictions on where the Jets will finish, go over what the best case scenario is, what the worst case scenario is. Also have some over-unders that I would play if you're looking for Jets-specific prop bets. And then also we'll do the famous and fun win-loss, win-loss game to see just where the Jets shake out this year. And in the preseason, we do a lot of talk about prospects and about those looking to make the team, who are some guys who can maybe be exciting and be at the bottom of the roster and make a difference. But when it comes to this season for the Jets, and we're looking to frame this around, is there any way this team can win 9 games, the first winning season since 2015? And by doing that, does it mean they could potentially make the playoffs for the first time in 15 years this winter? And it's an uphill battle. The Jets' schedule is very front-heavy. They're going to need to find a way to win some tough games early to give them a shot as the schedule weakens in the second half. But overall, it's going to be the Jets' top-line players who need to play at a high level for this team to win 9 games and be fighting for a playoff spot. It is all going to start with Justin Fields, and what version of Justin Fields do we see? Can the skill guys like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Braylon Allen and rookie Mason Taylor do enough where this offense can be more of the top half of the league instead of the bottom third? And this defense has a lot of question marks on it. Overall, this team's ceiling feels like around 9 wins, maybe 10 if everything goes perfect and they win some of those tough games in the beginning of the year, and then they can really beat up on softer competition at the end of the year. I think more likely we're going to finish in that 6, 7, 8 win area, but let's take a look at what the best case scenario would be for this Jets team. And let's start with the ground attack. The Jets need to be a top rushing team in the NFL if they have any chance at winning 9-10 games. Eagles last year had the most rushing attempts in the history of the NFL, around 620, 625. They rushed 36.5 times per game. The Jets need to be somewhere near that if they're going to win that many games. For one, that means that they actually have leads to protect, which lets them run the ball more. If they are trailing early, eventually they're going to have to air it out. That is probably a recipe for disaster for this team. So they need to rely on Justin Fields, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. Now let's look at Justin Fields. Justin Fields, if he can be who he was in his second and somewhat of his third season with the Bears, I think that that's a good mark for him to reach. In his second season, he played 15 games. He threw for 2,200 yards. He rushed for 1,000 yards. He had 25 total touchdowns. That is the equation for the Jets this year. Now, that Bears team went 3-14, and they lost their last 9 games of the season, but that Bears defense gave up the most points in the NFL. Fields needs to have a season that looks somewhat like that. An interesting stat, though, in his last 17 starts, so 11 games in 2023 and the 6 games he played for Pittsburgh, he completed 63% of his passes, threw for 3,200 yards, 7 yards per attempt, 190 yards per game, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, also had 8 rushing touchdowns, ran for 826 yards, had 11 turnovers total, and had a passer rating of 91.2. So that's a 17-game snapshot this season for the NFL. And those are the numbers of a middle-of-the-pack starting quarterback. And that is who the Jets need him to be if they're going to win 9-10 games. If they're going to fall in that range where in November they are playing games that matter, which for Jets fans, it's really all we want, is that there's meaningful games after Thanksgiving. The numbers are going to have to look like that. Another part of this equation needs to be that Garrett Wilson has another 1,000-yard receiving season. He's done that every single season in his career. He needs to continue that. He just got his extension. He needs to be one of the premier pass catchers and playmakers in this league. Another way that this team finishes with 9 or 10 wins, it'll mean that Breece Hall has somewhere around 60 catches, if not more, and all three running backs have meaningful seasons. Braylon Allen needs to be the goal line threat. Isaiah Davis is a nice change of pace back. He can both catch the ball and run out of the backfield. The three of them, plus Justin Fields, need to be one of the top 5 rushing offenses in this league if they have any shot of making the playoffs. Also, Jets special team needs to be top 15. They need to be in the middle of the pack this season. Their kicking and punting needs to be better and looks like it might be. McNamara has looked very promising as a rookie. Nick Folk is Nick Folk. He's completed over 90% of his kicks over the last 2 seasons. You hope that can continue. And their coverage just needs to be better. We've seen a lot of broken plays on special team. We've seen a lot of big returns, not always just for touchdowns, but plays that flip the field position right away and really create headaches for the Jets defense. If we look at that defense, it relies on a few people if they can take a leap. One of them needs to be Will McDonald. Can he be a double-digit sack player in this league? Can he consistently be a monster on the defensive end? He needs to be able to get to the quarterback when they're only rushing 4 or 5. Obviously, Quinnen Williams needs to play like the top 100 player that he is and have an all-pro season. And then also you need Quincy Williams, who's looking to play for a big contract, and Jamian Sherwood to be 2 Pro Bowl caliber linebackers. So much of the linebacking is going to be on their shoulders this season, and they have to tackle efficiently. Quincy Williams needs to blow up plays in the backfield. Sherwood has to be a 100 tackle player this season. And if they can put those things together and give the secondary some extra bodies to put in coverage so they're not vulnerable on the back end, they need to then turn the ball over. Overall, this team needs to turn the ball over more. They were tied for 6th fewest turnovers last season. They only had 7 interceptions. Besides 2 years ago, this has been a defense that has struggled to turn the ball over the last 5 years. And most importantly, they need to be better in one-possession games. This is really a stat that I think falls on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers, but also how many times did we see the defense, when they had a lead, finally late in the game, they would give it right up. And in one-possession games, the Jets were 3-10. So they lost 70% of the games that were one possession or less. And they had 0 wins in games decided by 3 or fewer points. They were 0-4. So to win games in the NFL where the competition is so high, you have to find a way to pull out wins. And that means getting meaningful stops, not being a top 10 defense, but then always giving up points in the fourth quarter. And you need to have game-winning drives. And I think with Justin Fields' ability to run the ball, and as long as he's feeling confident as a scrambler, he can be really dangerous in close game scenarios. So for the Jets to win 9 or 10 games this season, they need Justin Fields to be at least the best he's ever been, if not better. They need Garrett Wilson to be a premier wide receiver. They need to run the ball more than any team in the league. And their defense needs to take another step up and find a way to turn it over. And they have to find a way to win these close games and find clutch plays. And let's look at the Jets' worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is Justin Fields is who he is. He's the reason that the Bears gave up on him. He's the reason why the Steelers went to Russell Wilson instead of him and let him walk away. If Justin Fields cannot throw the ball downfield, and in the preseason his air yards per attempt were 4.5, that is not enough, then they're going to really struggle. And on top of that, if after Garrett Wilson they cannot find a second true pass catcher, whether it's Josh Reynolds or Mason Taylor, Breece Hall, Arian Smith, a renaissance year from Allen Lazard, if there's no true number 2, then Garrett Wilson will continue to be frustrated and continue to not get the ball when needed and will disappear in the red zone because they can just smother him. And if Fields cannot throw the ball further than the 4.5 air yards per attempt, defense is just going to crowd the box, and it's going to make it really easy to take away the run game. And if Fields is not confident throwing the ball downfield, it means the moments where he's forced to, he's going to be prone to make mistakes, or you're just going to have a lot of possessions fizzle out on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. Of the 2 scenarios, I think that one is very likely, and it's my biggest concern. The offensive line is definitely better this year, and that is a welcoming sight, and they should be able to protect Fields enough where he can at least go through his progression and then run run when there's nothing there. But what I do see is after a few games of Fields not throwing the ball downfield, teams are just going to crowd the box, and then Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen are not going to have room to maneuver. That is the scenario if all of those things happen, or most of those things happen, and they're not turning the ball over and they're not getting to the quarterback. That's how this ends up being another 4 or 5 win season. So, where do I think the Jets are actually going to fall? Well, let's talk about this through the prism of the win-loss, win-win-loss game, in which I'll go week to week and tell you if the Jets are going to win, if they're going to lose. I will post this prediction on social media as well. Go on Instagram and follow on Gangrene Against the World on Instagram. I'm at the Gangrene on Twitter/X, and you can find Gangrene Against the World on YouTube as well. So, let's play the game. So week 1 against the Steelers, I'll spend the most time here because if this was a really different Jets team and the Aaron Glenn era started in a way that was the least predictable, the Jets would come out and face an Aaron Rodgers team that is rusty, that is not quite cohesive on offense yet because they didn't have a lot of time to play together in the preseason. And this should be a team that is embarrassed by their tenure with Aaron Rodgers and should come out guns blazing. But I've watched a lot of Jets football, and my gut is this is going to be an ugly game where Aaron Rodgers scores a touchdown late and they win somewhere, around 17-14, 20-14. That is my gut in terms of this game and predicting how many wins the Jets will have this season. That is subject to change on Thursday, but right now that's how I feel. I give myself the ability to talk myself out of that on Thursday. So, week 1 against the Steelers, loss. Week 2 against the Bills at home at MetLife Stadium, I think that is also a loss. Week 3 at Tampa Bay, a very tough matchup, I think that is a loss. And here's the problem with this schedule. The schedule starts brutally. It starts with 6 teams who could make the playoffs and 3 teams who I think are very likely to make the playoffs in Steelers, Bills, and then at Bucks. Week 4, Dolphins, I think that's a win. You can always expect the Jets and Dolphins to split, but I think by week 4, Miami will be looking to see, is it time to fire Mike McDaniel? Are they going to get a new coach? I would expect that can be a win in Miami. Week 5 against Dallas, I think that's a win. So through 5, I think that they're going to be 2-3. I think Dallas is a mess. I think that there's going to be noise around Dak Prescott this year. I think that's a winnable game for the Jets. Then week 6, overseas against the Broncos. The Jets play terribly in Europe, and I think that is going to be another issue, and I think they're going to lose to a promising upstart Broncos team. So through 6 games, I think they're 2-4. Carolina Panthers could very well be one of the worst teams in football. If you can't beat them at home, then what are we really talking about here? So I think they win that game. And in the last game, heading into the bye week, at the Cincinnati Bengals, I think the Bengals are going to be very, very good. I think that is a loss. So the 8 games leading into the bye are really tough. I see them going 3-5. If they want to have a chance to make the playoffs, they have to find a tough win here somewhere. Maybe it's the Broncos. Maybe it's week 1 against the Steelers. The target needs to be 500 at the bye week. I don't think they quite do it. So week 9's a bye week. There's no winners or losers. We get to relax. Then we will be welcoming possibly Joe Flacco if he's still the quarterback for the Browns. Week 10 at home against the Browns. And I think they win that game. And I think that's the last game they win for a month. I think they lose at the Patriots. I think they lose at the Ravens. I think they lose at home against the Falcons. And I think they lose at home against the Dolphins. So I think that after getting to 4-5, they're going to fall to 4-9. And that's going to be the stretch that most likely effectively ends their season if it goes that way. I think New England's will be better this year. I think they're going to fight for a wild card. They'll be much better coached this season under Mike Vrabel. Baltimore is my pick to come out of the AFC. Atlanta's my pick to win the South. And the Dolphins, they always split. So maybe the Jets win the first one at home, lose the second one on the road. The way I see it, this is how it falls out. Now, if they can get to this next stretch still in contention, Jaguars, Saints, Patriots, I think they could win those 3 games. So I think they lose the road game against the Patriots, like I said, but I think they'll win at the Jaguars, win at the Saints, win against the Patriots. They finish the season at Buffalo. That game might mean something for Buffalo to clinch either a division, which they'll probably have locked up, or it might be to win the conference to get a first-round bye. So, overall, We have week 1 Steelers loss, Bills loss, Buccaneers loss, Dolphins win, Cowboys win, Broncos loss, Panthers win, Bengals loss. That gets them to 3-5 at the bye week. Browns win, Patriots loss, Ravens loss, Falcons loss, Dolphins loss, Jaguars win, Saints win, Patriots win, finishing the year with a Bills loss. If that's the way this season goes, my prediction will be that the Jets are 7-9 this season. 7-9 is about where they've been in their top years of the last decade, which is still not good enough. I think it'll be enough to have a conversation about Justin Fields, especially if they have a strong end to the season against a weaker schedule. Then I think they're talking about, do you extend him a little bit more so he's not a lame duck quarterback? Is it time to look for another option? They probably won't be bad enough to get a high draft pick in what is supposed to be a really rich draft with quarterbacks. So overall, I think this is going to be more of the same from the Jets. Now, if the Jets can be 3-5 at the bye, which probably still isn't good enough to make the playoffs, but at least gets them still competitive towards the second half of the season, that stretch of Browns, Patriots, Ravens, Falcons, Dolphins, Jaguars, Saints, Patriots, there are wins there. So I just think that this team is not going to be able to throw the ball consistently enough that in the back half of the season, teams are just going to find that to be very predictable. So they're going to have a harder time to win. But all I want this Jets season to be is that we are in November and they are playing meaningful football games. And in a magical, magical world, if in week 17, that game against the Patriots at MetLife Stadium could mean something, me as a season ticket holder and as a Jets fan who's craving meaningful football, that would be a lot of fun. But I don't think it's going to quite go that way for the Jets this year. So I think the Jets go 7-9. Hopefully we will see enough from Aaron Glenn that we're confident he's the coach of the future and that we see some building blocks and, you know, we're looking towards, okay, they won 7 games this year. There's a real roadmap to winning 10 games next year. So that's the official prediction for the Jets this season. I do want to go over some prop bets for the Jets. So looking at some over-unders for the team. First one is Justin Fields over under 2,550 yards and a half. I would take the under on that. You get better odds on it at plus 100. The Jets are going to run the ball a lot, and he has only ever thrown for more than 2,500 yards once in his career. I don't know if it's going to shake out that way. So you can get Justin Fields under 2,550 and a half at plus 100. Garrett Wilson over under 950 yards. Garrett Wilson has always had 1,000 yards receiving in his NFL career. I think he's going to be getting the most targets in the NFL this season, and I think that's the equation for an over there. So you can get him over 950 and a half yards at minus 110. I would take that over. Breece Hall over under 850 and a half rushing yards. I would take the under here. You can get that under at minus 115, which tells you Vegas thinks it's going to be an under 2. But there's going to be a lot of players who run the ball. So even if 36 carries per game happen, in the best case scenario, they're running the ball a ton and they're winning games because of time of possession and all that. Will Breece Hall have 20 of those carries per game? Will he have enough rushing attempts to even hit that number? So I would take the under at minus 115 for Breece Hall rushing yards, 850 and a half. Justin Fields over under 6.5 rushing touchdowns. I love that as an over. Get that at minus 110. If the Jets are within the 3-yard line, they're going to tush push, and they're going to probably do it twice if they need to. Look for him to score over 6.5 touchdowns. So get that over. Justin Fields, 6.5 touchdowns rushing, minus 110. And if you think positive and want to bet on Jets win totals, if you think this team is going to be fighting for a real playoff spot at the end of the season, you can get the Jets over 7.5 wins at plus 200. So that means they could still be a losing football team and you still got them at plus 200. If you feel this is going to be the worst case scenario for the New York Jets, you can get under 5.5 at plus 130. I think that would be a real disaster of a season. I think if this team finishes with 4 or 5 wins, you're talking about, you know, Arch Manning and whoever else will be a top quarterback in the upcoming draft. So if you are on the positive side of things, you can get the Jets over 7.5 wins at plus 200. If you're a negative Nelly and think that they're going to have another disastrous season, then you can get them under 5.5 at plus 130. So this has been the official prediction episode of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. Again, I think the Jets go 7-9. I think that we'll have a hard time week 1, but I'm willing to change my mind about the week 1 outcome when we have a conversation with a guest on Thursday. And overall on Thursday, we're going to be breaking down the first game of the season, which is so exciting. I hope my prediction is way wrong. I hope it is at MetLife Stadium, Week 17 against the Patriots, playing for a wild card spot. I would absolutely love that. Either way, football is here. Thursday night is the first game, Eagles against the Cowboys. There's a game on Friday as well with the Chargers and the Chiefs, and then a full slate of games Sunday. We're getting into it. I'll see you on Thursday to break down the Jets versus Steelers. This has been episode 9 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you so much for listening.